devil loves to misquote. It's in the Sermon on the Mount. Can't remember. A lot of people like throwing around the word judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can only, like, who are you has the right to judge? Like, you can't judge other people. That is, it's so incorrect, because there's a difference between judgment and condemnation, right? Because at 1 Corinthians 5 is that us as followers of Christ, we're called to judge members of the church, right? God will judge members outside the church, right? But we are supposed to judge members inside the church.
According to their fruit.
According to their fruit, right? Is that Jesus says, exactly, this is great. You will know them by their fruit, right? And so how are we supposed to know them if we can't judge their fruit, right? And so it's in Matthew 7 is that, oh, well, like people say, I mean, watch out for the log in your own eye, and then they stop talking. And it's like, the whole point of that verse is, okay, I'm going to deal with my log, you deal with your speck, to each his own, don't judge it. That's not the point of that verse. Is that the point of that verse is, so I'm going to deal with my log so I can see better to deal with your speck. Because and there's a reason that Jesus uses the eye, because you can see my eye and I can see your eye, but I can't see my eye right now. Therefore, what is called a blind spot. We're connecting dots here, right? It's because I can't see my blind spot. You can see my blind spot, and I can see your blind spot, right? So the goal of that verse is like, you deal with your log, I'm gonna deal with my log, and to each his own. No, it's that the reason why we deal with our own log is so we can help people deal with their sin, right? So we can see clearly to judge other people in their sin, of being like, hey man, this is a blind spot in your life. I love you enough to tell you about it.
Well, and he says that. He says, if your brother is in sin, go and talk to him about it.
It's Matthew 18.
Yeah,
I think.
And so I didn't, all that to say, I didn't have that.
Right.
And that's where my shortcomings came from.
Yeah, I think that goes back. There's something I thought about whenever, I think it was when you asked, what do you do in a situation where you do have something that needs to be shared in dating? Because like you probably don't want to get to an engagement. You've asked the girl, she said yes, and then it's like, oh, we're engaged now. You need to know that up until yesterday I was watching porn. So
wow, yeah.
So I was thinking about that when we were talking about it, and like I've gone through this experience of something, a guy needed to tell me something in dating, and Pavi, like the way that Pavi handled it and y'all handled it is something that I think goes to your point, is that we struggle alone. The culture, we date alone. Like the enemy has done so good at getting us alone. And even like at my age or even at your age, like you think, well, when you're dating in high school, your parents should be involved. But like if you're in your 20s, like your late 20s or your 30s or you're out of college, like you should be handling that on your own. And that's what the enemy wants. Like, and statistics, we're getting married later, we're dating longer. I mean, right or wrong, not the point. But we're in a culture that is alone, like you should be handling this alone, and it's not what the Bible says. And so in the situation that we had, it was he told Pavi and you talked about it, and then y'all came to me, shared what I needed to know, and then that formed the mentoring of the four of us handled it. And it was something that like I want always going forward, because you shouldn't date alone. And when there is something that needs to be shared in a dating relationship, but that would cross that boundary of like, this is gonna emotionally put us in a situation where I'm gonna feel responsible for what I'm doing because of your sin struggles, and it's gonna put me in a situation where I feel like I'm gonna have to like worry about it, keep them accountable, like put that stress. But then that also just, there's so many different things that you're talking about when you open up in sin struggles for dating with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, that you're crossing boundaries. But that's an opportunity that you bring someone else into the relationship that can help you
Yeah, I was about to say
navigate
maybe you just bring them up and say they're here, but this is who I'm talking to about it. Like this is my group, just like you said in your framework. This is my group. These people keep me accountable, but I just want you to know that this is what I deal with.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think you would feel the time when that's appropriate. You know, it's probably not a first or second date, third date, but you know, once you've been talking and hanging out for a while or whatever, and you really think that something could go somewhere, that, you know, at some point you would bring up whatever it is, because you know, to your point about not having, not being in a relationship alone, say, well, that would never happen to me, or I would never do that. You're like, don't say that, because that's when the enemy comes in. So,
because I mean, to like, no one that is in a position, I mean, we hear all the time, like, no one in jail woke up one day and was like, I'm gonna do this to get me in jail. Like, or you don't stand on your wedding day and say, like, I'm getting married today, but like, I'll be divorced one day. Like, no one in a position that no one in a position that we stand on this side and we're like, oh, I would never do that. They thought they'd never do it either.
Right.
And so that's the position that we're all in, of like, back to like not being alone, not saying never, not standing in like you should never say it. You should just prepare yourself to not be in that position, because that's what we say, we'll never do that, but then we compromise our standards over and over and over again because that guy's cute. Well, that guy asked me out. What if I never get married? I've got to just find somebody to marry. And then we get into like our favorite hot topic of like dating under standards, because you might never find anyone else. Or guys, like, girls just pick someone who is not up to standards just because, like, the type of guy that Beau O'Ferrell is doesn't actually exist. Like, you're a figment of our imagination. You're not actually here.
Right.
But
few and far between.
He's real. And you're not the only one, too. Like,
and that's why we're having this conversation, because as the world progresses and as, you know, things change and people just continue like the slippery slope and constantly move the line a little bit more, like we talk about, that's why this conversation is so important. Going back to the original, why we are actually having this podcast. You know, a lot of people think that it all starts with a guy, but as a girl and as a girl mom, I think there are definitely two different responsibilities that ultimately fall on the parents. The dad's role, which we did talk about already, the ability to lead and love and lead well, and then the responsibility of the girl to understand through the conversation and relationship with her parents what a guy is naturally made for and struggles with because of what he was made for, and then how to protect his future, his heart, and his relationship with the Lord by choosing what she wears, how she acts, how she just presents herself in all circumstances, situations, everything, because it's like we said in Proverbs 31:12, that a godly woman, the virtuous woman, does her husband good, not harm, all the days of her life. And that starts in 5th grade, 6th grade, middle school, you know, with all the things, which is why those conversations are important with the parents. But if you don't have a parent, because so many of our girls have lost their fathers, we've talked about that recently, if you don't have someone like that to talk to, you can definitely pray. You know, if you are in relationship with the Lord, and if you are praying and just ask the Lord for those people in your life to talk to about what guys are going through and how what you wear affects them, because Isaiah 54 says the maker, the Lord is the maker, and he is our husband. So he's definitely, when I was a single mom, he was my husband. He showed me that. And then also, if you have lost your dad, the psalm says that he's a father to the fatherless and a defender of widows, not windows, widows, defender of widows. And so, you know, I think that we can all just be confident as a girl, no matter our age, that when we seek the Lord in his way, in his wisdom, James says he gives freely to those who ask without finding fault. And that's what we need to understand guys and our relationship with guys and help protect y'all in your pursuit to be a godly man.
Yeah, you as a college student were looking for a guy to marry, and like most all girls are, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
And
because you're like, I'm supposed to get married, I want to get married,
yeah,
and look, these are the cute guys around here.
You
so
had some standards because you grew up around great aunts. Like, you had people speaking into your life, you had people praying for you, you had some standards, and you have said so many times, like, you found a guy that worked in the church, and that's kind of where you were like, oh, he's got to be good, he works in the church, like, and that's kind of where it stopped. And so, like, where, I don't know, like, if we talk about standards, like, we have what we're like looking for, but you have an example of like your standards for a guy who loves Jesus or goes to church, or for you, like, you met a guy that worked in the church or was going to work in the church, and so you were just kind of like, okay, great, check the box, let's go, let's get married. And we see so many girls and guys like keep their standards, like they have this long list, like so many of us are told, like, make your list, pray over your list, or you just have, like, I want a guy that is taller than me, who has brown hair, who, like, just list out all of the attributes of Beau O'Ferrell, and, like, and then you find a guy, and, like, he's, like, one or two of those things. He works at a church. And then people are like, well, it doesn't really matter, like, he might not be everything on your list.
it looks good on the outside.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, well, I mean, he's cute, so...
Or everything he's doing
Yeah.
on the outside
Yeah,
that
so
everybody
it's
else
like...
can see is okay.
What we talk a lot about is, like, we're training our flesh, which is kind of, like, what we've been talking about, and, like, so when you see one thing, and you're just like, oh, well, I don't know if I'll ever get someone who's all of these things. So he works in a church. So, like, that's probably good enough. But then, like, what happens when you settle for that just because you see, like, one thing?
And all the other things are not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
think one thing substitutes for all the other things.
But for whatever reason, you think that because, like, in my situation, nobody had those conversations with me when I was
Right.
growing up.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think we're all born knowing right and wrong because the word tells us that he's written his laws on our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
So we know right and wrong, but for whatever reason, usually because there's not a strong support network there to reinforce why the truth is good and right, you just sort of like, and you just let it go.
Yeah.
And so, what was your question exactly?
Just like what happens when we let go of a standard
Of the
just
standards?
because we're kind of like, oh, he's cute, he
Yeah.
works in a church.
It's no big deal. It'll be fine. I mean, nobody's perfect, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of the attitude. Nobody's perfect. So,
Yeah. Or, I mean, me and Beau both have been told, like, well, your standards are too high. So,
no, I mean, I think you miss out on what could be
mhm.
when you start compromising
Yeah.
and making excuses. I think you miss out on what the best could be.
Yeah, because, like, put you on the spot now, like, you had a list, maybe, I might need to fill
For
this out.
Poppy?
But, like, yeah, I'll put you on the spot now because Poppy does check every single box.
Well,
And
my
more.
list became Psalm 112. Psalm
Right.
112.
Yes.
Because, like I told Beau earlier, I just wanted a man who knew the Lord.
Mhm.
Because there's a difference between going to church and actually
Yes.
knowing the Lord.
Yeah.
And because when you know the Lord,
Mhm.
you love Him
Yeah.
and you want to please Him. And you're willing to sacrifice like He sacrificed to obey God the Father just like Jesus did.
Yeah.
Because Jesus didn't want to go to the cross.
Mhm.
But for the joy set before Him, which was the relationship with His Father that He didn't want to sacrifice.
Yeah.
he didn't want to cut ties with his father because he loved his father so much. That's the kind of man I wanted to marry, somebody that knew God. And everything else, I knew that if that was in place, I knew that everything else would fall into place.
Yeah.
And that's Psalm 112.
Yeah.
And it says, blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who finds great delight in his commands. And it goes on to a lot more. But verse 8 says, his heart is secure. He will have no fear, and in the end he will look in triumph on his foes. And I think as a girl, that's what we dream of. We want the stability of the 50-year marriage where they're still holding hands when they're 80 years old, and you can see that they still smile
And wearing matching
giggle.
outfits to the boat parade for 4th of July.
Yeah, and they still giggle with each other.
Yeah.
And you can tell they still, even as sometimes maybe it might even be so gross, but they still kind of flirt with each other, you know?
So cute.
But every girl wants that. And I think ultimately every guy wants that. Like, because you want to be that girl's hero.
Yeah.
And so when we compromise for whatever reason, that's what we're going to miss out on.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what, I mean, you got the opportunity to date in the way of like that, but you had your kids and you wanted a man not just for you, but someone who could show that to them. Yeah. But that should be our mindset before kids too. And I think that's something that, like, when we go into what you say, like, that's something that sometimes we get so caught up in, like, oh, well, he's good enough. Or, like, with what, like, we'll talk about is, like, we let the standard down to get what we want, and we don't think about it in a way of, like, you had your 5 kids and you wanted someone that you were going to marry that not only was that for you, but, like, was going to be that for them, because, like,
I wanted them to see what
said,
a godly
like,
man looked
yeah,
like.
when you when you let your standard down and you choose someone to marry that's not up to standard, not living that way, or you pick low-hanging fruit, or you pick fruit that's not ripe yet, and you go outside of, like, timeline, and you, like, everything we'll get into, then you not only affect your marriage, but you affect your children. And so in a dating relationship and looking to that, it's like, not only is this going to be the man or woman that I want, that I need to be married to in order to walk in the way that the Lord is calling me to, but who's he going to be for my kids? Like, what kind of dad is he going to be? What kind of, like, mom is she going to be? And so, Beau, for you, like, you are surrounding, your friends are getting married, your friends are engaged, your friends are, like, in the season that you are still, like, looking for that and praying for it. So, like, what in what ways do you see, like, why we drop standards, when we drop standards, like, what happens in all of the, just into it?
Before I answer that, I wanted to ask y'all, because it's, how do we balance, we don't want to drop our standards, but also, like JP says, like, if you're looking for the, like, well, he says it very bluntly.
Yeah,
if you're looking for the girl who looks like a porn star but also is Mother Teresa,
right,
like, don't be
get,
surprised if you're 35 and not married.
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
So how do we balance not dropping our standards, but also realizing that no one's perfect?
Yeah, JP always says, find the godliest girl that you know and ask her out. Like, it doesn't, like, it, and he takes he's a little further up on the, like, attraction doesn't matter, but he's very much like, you can't, like, you have to go to that standard first of, like, the gut. Are you disagreeing? Okay. Like, what's happening?
Is that giving you a weird look?
Your eyes are thinking very hard right now. Yeah, so definitely. Which, we talk about that a lot, of just, like, you're gonna, I think we already said it, but, like, you're gonna attract the person that you are. And you can't live, but we already talked about the 5 things, right?
The 5 framework.
Yeah, so we've already said
framework.
that. Like, you can't look for a guy who's gonna put you first, but then expect a marriage that he put you 5th in the dating. and like that framework is going to get you to the godly husband that so many girls want, but they're not willing to do that because they're looking at, like, you know, the cute guy, or the guy's looking for the supermodel when you're 5'8", looking for the 6'4" supermodel.
Yeah.
You know people who are dating they're under dating, or the girl is under dating because...
Does that mean they're compromising because they just want to be in a relationship, so they're just lowering their standards of purity? Is that what we're talking? Because you can have standards of what you know, like I knew a girl who was only going to marry someone with a certain major because of what they would make later in life.
Yeah, I got definitely
And,
God
I mean,
standards, not vain standards.
Okay, purity standards. That's what we're talking about, purity standards.
Well, I
Okay.
mean, also priorities.
Just in the general, it's just standards.
Yeah, I mean, I think priorities too, because technically his five-fold, like,
Framework.
5-point framework is not all purity based,
Okay.
but relationships and
Okay.
who you put first and what you put first, and
Which-
it leads to purity.
Yeah, I think that's what my point is. It
So-
ultimately leads to purity.
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
I think most girls would probably say they compromise their standards most to fit their chronological timeline that they think they should have because of culture, because of social media. I did say just culture twice. Because it is like there's just all this pressure that like you go to college, you graduate in 4 years, you get a ring by spring, like
5-year plan.
you have your candlelight ceremony with your sorority, and like it's all laid out. And if you don't get that, then like senior year of college, all your friends are getting engaged and you're not. But I think that keeps coming to my mind is like, I thought about a tomato earlier, but people pick tomatoes and make fried green tomatoes, but like it's like you can't make a tomato is so much more there's so many more things that you can do with a ripe tomato than you can do with a fried, like, green tomato. Like the only thing you can do with the green tomatoes is like make green, like, I don't know, so
green tomatoes.
yeah, it's like my brain is like
There's one thing that you can do with a fried green
when
tomato, but lots of things you can do with a red ripe tomato.
yeah, so we go out, we drop our standards, we go out of the timeline of God because we think we know best, so we get a guy who's going to do what we think they're going to do, and they're going to propose to us at a certain time. We're going to manipulate them enough that, like, this is the thing that we're supposed to do. And so then you get a guy who isn't ready for it, but you expect him to be. So, like, where do you see that happening? Like, in your why and where and how and what would you tell them? Besides just stop. Stop, drop, and run.
Just stop.
That's
Just
what
stop
I've been
it.
told before. Red flag, stop, drop, run.
Stop, drop, run.
Run away and never look back. Worked out well for me.
I think the key word here is manipulation. Just because whenever, which me being part of the bride of Christ, I understand what it feels like to want to go manipulate your reality instead of trusting God, right? That He is going to conduct my life in a way that is going to make me holy, right? So me, instead of submitting to God, I know what the spirit of, even though obviously I'm a man and the spirit of Adam is in me, I understand what it feels like to have the spirit of Eve, because the spirit of Eve is to manipulate and to take things into your own hands and to not trust God and to not trust His timing. So I see a lot of great girls who date and marry even an average guy because that girl who is in the spirit of Eve and wants to manipulate everything around her would rather manipulate an average guy because she knows she's not going to be able to manipulate a godly guy.
Mhm.
So she would rather have an average guy wrapped around her finger rather than be led by a godly guy.
Yeah.
Because being led by a godly guy and being led by Jesus, and of course this all relates to our relationship with Jesus, that's a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes patience.
Yeah.
And it takes trust.
Yeah.
And it takes realizing I'm emotional, I don't know what's best for me, so I'm going to be led by someone else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of course that pictures a marriage of how my relationship is with Jesus.
Yeah. I think that's subconsciously and consciously, right? Like, I don't know many girls that would say, like, I dated that guy because I knew I could manipulate him. There are girls that would point blank say that, but
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah, they
our
would just say like,
flesh
I
more.
knew I could wrap him around my finger.
Yeah, and like our
Mhm.
flesh of, I think it's the culture that we've talked about with like, the culture is so much of, but your boyfriend's supposed to shower you with gifts, and he's supposed to pay for everything, and he's supposed to do what I want him to do, and he's supposed to drop everything when I'm a damsel in distress. Like,
Yeah.
that's what he's supposed to do. And so I think not every girl would say my motive in dating this guy less than me is because I wanted him to do it, but I think it's the flesh in us, even if we don't. Is that right? Like, our flesh sometimes is taking over if we're not,
Yeah, of course.
if we're not actively pursuing to fight our flesh, then sometimes there's a way that we are thinking that could completely go into what you're saying, but not in a way of like, not every girl is actively thinking, I'm gonna get this guy to date me so that I can manipulate him. But I think our flesh, like, you're right. Like, I
But
think the
if he
flesh
kind of
is
plays
the,
along, if he plays along with it though,
yeah,
which
and it's
you know,
easy.
there's the courting phase where, and then
Yeah.
and then he likes her and she likes him, and then she's like, oh, and then you know smiles about something she really wants, and he delivers, and
Yeah.
that pattern
And it feels
continues.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then it's just
Yeah, which is where we
that's what
get
happens.
into the like, don't date someone that you wouldn't marry, because you might date him long enough to just marry him, because why not? And I think that's where the standard, holding the standard, is so important, that the culture makes us drop so much, because the enemy knows, well, if I can get them to compromise here and here and like a little bit here, then they'll be so emotionally involved that like after a year, after 2 years, after dating all through college, you don't have any other experiences except with this person, dating them, you have no other choice but to get married, because you just wasted 3-4 years of your life. But you know, like, that's not the high standard relationship marriage that you could be in, but you've settled for the fried green tomatoes.
Yeah. And it's the average guy who's in that situation is like, man, I'm never gonna get a girl as good as this one, and I outpunted my coverage so much that I'm gonna
Like,
drop.
attractively.
Maybe attractively, maybe, man, this girl is way ahead of me spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I'm never gonna get a girl maybe this beautiful. I'm never gonna get a girl who's this godly. And so he now he shoots her up to priority number 2 at least, maybe number 1, and
Yeah.
forgets his brothers in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
He forgets his family, forgets his work, and then all of a sudden, I mean, we all know that guy who got a girlfriend and then now we're just not friends with him anymore.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
like got a girlfriend and he doesn't come around anymore. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Or
Girls too.
and like you have even families.
Yeah.
It's like, man, like
Never see them.
anytime I see him, like she's here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's in
Yeah.
a dating relationship.
Yeah.
And then the girl gets used to, man, even if I have work at 7 a.m. tomorrow, I'm gonna hang out with you till 11,
Mm-hmm.
which that's a whole sexual purity conversation.
Yeah.
right.
But like, it's like now she gets accustomed to, okay, if I'm the girl, okay, he's gonna put me over his finances, over his work, over his brothers in Christ, and then all of a sudden, when you continue, if you're that guy, you're like, dang, I continue to give and give and give to this girl is never going to be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you set that expectation, and it's like,
it's hard to go back.
Like basically
really hard to go back.
All you're giving in marriage is like, you know, you have the sex, but also just you get to wake up to my bad breath in the morning. But everything else, like you've already been doing. Like I've been giving you all my time, all my attention, all my money, all my family vacations.
Which
nothing
is so
else.
unwise in so many ways, because you needed that foundation to keep yourself accountable, to keep your close family relationship strong. And when you add your wife into it, you're just adding a bonus to everything. And she is able to walk into a situation it's already sound and stable, and it's just, that's where you have the gift. But anything that's given too soon outside of marriage, whether it's more money than that should be allowed, you know, or an expectation for a certain standard of living, or of course sexual immorality that we always talk about, anything that's given before time, once somehow it's going to create resentment once you're married.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's not that you can just say, oh, well, you know, I'm a Christian and Jesus I'm forgiven yesterday and he forgives me all my past, present, and future sins. You know, I mean, of course there's forgiveness, but there's consequences for sin, not only spiritually, but just like in regular life, just the consequences of living out of order that create resentment.
Yeah.
So the spiritual sin creates death, the regular out of order living just creates chaos, and then ultimately resentment and bad marriage.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to understand why that 5-point framework is so good. Like, I don't think I've ever heard it said that way until you just said it recently. But I'm like, I mean, I've always told my girls, look, God first, family, then your school, and then your friends, or then your sports. I mean, I've kind of said those things, but not in a way where I like had a name for all of it, you know. But but ultimately it's because you're having to set priorities so that you can just continue to grow on a stable foundation that really not just creates but fosters stability and security.
Yeah, I think it sets up our marriages so much more because, like we just said, like you're really only told like to save sex for marriage, but like nothing really else. But this kind of brings up the fact that like basically so many people are dating as if they're married. Yeah. And so that doesn't set marriage apart in any way. And then I think the enemy has done that so well that he's made marriage, like, people always say, like, don't give the cow the milk before the whatever it's called. Like, if the cow's not going to want the milk, like, what, I don't know what that thing is. But, like, and that's, like, usually just, like, the physical part of it. But I think it's so much more important to realize, like, there is so much to marriage that has been allowed. And the enemy uses that to make marriage, like, not that. Like, what's so different?
Right. What's
and
the
like,
point of marriage?
Yeah,
if
what's
you
the
can just
point?
have everything
Especially
without it?
now with, like, the sexual culture being so, like, I mean, the world is so sexualized now that it's like, if that's the only thing that you get in marriage that as a Christian you can't have outside of marriage, then, like, but you can get it in so many other ways, and you can go watch it, even not in like a pornography situation, but if you just go watch something like The Summer I Turned Pretty because all the girls are watching it, then like that makes it so normalized that you don't, they start that at 12. By the time they're old enough for it, it's not even that. They've watched it all this time. And
There's
it
nothing
makes
special about it.
Yeah, like, and so I think that's why standards and the 5 like framework that you're putting is like, this is why it's so important to have these standards and hold them and understand that, like, it might not feel great now to not be number 1, but like, that's why you don't go plant a garden and then go pick everything the day it starts to, like, if your strawberries start to grow and you start to see the flower and you go pick it because it's like, oh, it's so exciting, like here's a little
It's
boy
not
that
ready
likes
yet.
me, and then you expect everything out of marriage from this guy that you're dating, then like you're not gonna be, it's not gonna last, or it's gonna set up a marriage that is gonna fail. And so I think
You're just stealing from yourself.
Yeah.
Because really, you're stealing from your future happiness
Yeah.
when you take things out of order.